Hello everyone, and welcome back to UK Homicide. If you're new to our channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button, like, and share to stay updated. Today's case shows you should never give up on finding a lost one. On April 26, 2023, human remains were discovered by a man digging a ditch in woodland off Coxmoor Road in Sutton in Ashfield. The farmer alerted the police after unearthing human bones and men's clothing buried 6 feet deep.
They said you'd better come up here quick, but it was a bit of a joker, this chap, so I didn't believe him. He insisted I went. He said, no, I'm not messing about now, you need to come up here straight away.
The skeleton showed signs of violent trauma, indicating murder, and pre-decimal coins were found in the pocket. The makeshift grave was 6 feet deep. A crime scene was established to ensure no evidence needed to identify the victim were lost or damaged. The police issued many appeals and used social media to share images of the odd socks and shoes found with the remains. Russell Lowbridge recognized the odd socks as belonging to his granddad, Alfred Swinscoe. Russell said in an interview, "I didn't pay much attention to begin with, but then police posted a photo of a pair of odd socks, and I had this incredible flashback, with the black sock in particular. I suddenly remembered, as a kid, putting on my granddad's socks and pulling them up so the heel came right up to my knee. I called the police, and they came to take a DNA swab. That's when we found out that it really was Alfred, and it was time to piece together what had happened." On January 27, 1967, Alfred was drinking in the Miners Arms pub with his 2 sons and friends. At 10:30 p.m., he was seen giving money to his son Gary to buy a round and then leaving to use the outside toilet. He would never be seen again. Any police investigation was cursory at best. Back in 1967, the mindset was that the missing person will just turn up. Retired East Midlands murder detective Peter Bray said in the 1960s, officers sometimes did not take cases of missing people seriously. The common belief was that Alfred, who had recently separated from his wife, had abandoned her and their 6 children. Although Alfred's family did give police the name of a family friend that they believed was involved, this was not followed up, even though he followed Alfred out of the pub and had a history of extreme violence. Alfred had worked as a cutter at Langton Colliery since he was 14. He cut large chunks of coal out of the coalface for others to break down. These mines were hazardous. Fire, flood, noxious and inflammable gas, explosion, and roof collapse were all possible. The mines operated day and night, and the miners worked in shifts. A typical Yorkshire miner's day in the 19th century was as follows. The workers woke up before dawn, had breakfast of bread, homemade cheese, biscuits, and milk, and hurried off to the pit. All miners were required to wear tokens, which could be used to identify a person in the event of an accident. They then descended to a depth of 500 feet, lighting the way with a small lamp. The miners sat in what is known as a set, consisting of wagons on rails. The set was pulled by the ponies until the tunnel became too narrow. The tunnel ceilings were often so narrow that the men had to work with picks and shovels lying down. During the lunch break, which the miners called bait or snap time, they would stay in the mines. Lunch consisted of water, jam, and bread. As a side note, there were no toilets underground, so many people took newspapers or rags with them. A post-mortem on Alfred's remains revealed, quote, "He was murdered quite viciously. There was blunt force trauma to the head and sharp force trauma to the jawlines, so it might have been the edge of a spade and possibly stabbing afterwards. They said he fought for his life. There were signs of a broken hand as if he'd given somebody a good right hook, and they found trauma to his ribs and his back, as if he'd been grappling with someone, and they'd been punching him in the ribs." Detectives interviewed several people who knew Alfred to build a better picture of him. Witness statements were taken from those who saw him in the days leading up to his disappearance and the night he went missing. Medical notes and work rotas from his time as a miner were analyzed to narrow down the exact time he went missing. Officers also carried out criminal records and background checks on those living in and around Pinxton at the time. Police believe he'd been left somewhere for a week or more before they buried him, because fingers and ribs were missing, as if he'd been ravaged by foxes and badgers. They also surmised that a vehicle would have been used in the killing, as it was some distance between the pub and where Alfred was buried. For those of you on YouTube, you can see a map where I have marked key locations. They added it would have been rare to own a car in the village of Pinxton in 1967. Police identified 2 murder suspects, both of whom are no longer alive. One of those names was the same as the family had provided in 1967.
First this lunchtime, police have confirmed that they've identified 2 suspects over the murder of a father of 6 who was killed 57 years ago.
These names have never been publicly disclosed. So, let's have a look at this first and original suspect. He served in the military when he was in his 20s and was friends with Alfred's eldest son. In 1962, he was imprisoned for 6 months for driving whilst disqualified and without insurance and theft. His history of violence included an attack similar to that which was believed to have happened to Alfred on John Shawcroft a year earlier. This brutal attack took place in April 1966. John said, "We used to go drinking and mess about with motorbikes and cars. After driving to Mansfield to drink, the pair sat in the man's car together. Without warning, the man hit John in the face, then walked from the driver's side to the passenger seat, dragged him out of the car and kicked him repeatedly as he lay on the floor. We were just talking. Next thing, bang, said John. I can remember him kicking me and that were it. I just lay there. I was left bleeding profusely and had to spend 2 weeks in hospital." His attacker was convicted of malicious wounding, one of the most serious violent offenses in our legal system. Another Pinxton man, Fred Webster, went to school with Alfred's youngest son. Around the time of Alfred's disappearance, he said he had a strange encounter with the same man who assaulted John. Owning a car was unusual in Pinxton in the 1960s, so when the suspect offered him, quote, a spin in a car, he didn't take much persuading. He just turned up, and he just asked me if I wanted to go out like, he said. I sort of judged him as a bit strange. The man took Fred on a high-speed drive near Woodland off Coxmore Road in Sutton in Ashfield, close to where Alfred's body was buried. He said something like, "These woods on the right-hand side," and something about, "You can sure hide some at up there," he said. Fred said the drive left him with an uneasy feeling, partly because the route was out of the way, more than 6 miles from Pinxton, where they both lived. Very little has been said about the second suspect. An investigation established that he was a Pinxton man and was known to Alfred and his family. The evidence against him and the first suspect is far from concrete, but police said
if they were alive today, they would be arrested, interviewed, and asked for an explanation of a variety of different events.
First this lunchtime, police have confirmed that they've identified 2 suspects over the murder of a father of 6 who was killed 57 years ago.
Do you have any answers about a mystery spanning nearly 60 years?
Those may think they know something. You would rather have that information.
Bring those responsible for Alfred's death to justice.
The following 3 statements were made in response to criticism about how Alfred's case was handled. 1. The way that the police investigates both missing persons and homicide have significantly changed since 1967. 2. The murder of Alfred Swinsko was a horrific act, and our thoughts remain with his family and friends. 3. Alfred's family remain at the heart of everything we do. The family held a small funeral for Alfred in Sutton in Ashfield. He now rests alongside his son Gary and near his daughter Carol and wife Caroline, who passed without remarrying. I'll leave the last comment to his grandson Russell, who said, "It's good to have him back home buried properly with his family, and we feel content that he's not lost anymore." Thank you for watching and remembering Alfred with me. Let me know your thoughts about this case. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more cases. Take care, stay safe, and look out for each other.